Okay, welcome everyone to your final seminar session. We're going to go ahead and get started. Just remember that if you decide to participate in the conversation, that you need to have a microphone so that when this is recorded, they can hear what you're saying. So please be patient with us if we're running around the room trying to get microphones to all of you. My name is Rachel Nosko, and I'm part of the field faculty team, and I'm going to let Lee introduce herself as well.
I'm Lee Robertson, also part of the field faculty team.
And Daisha just walked out the door. So Daisha Price is also here, and I'll point her out when she walks in. I think she had to step out quickly. We were going to give you a couple quick reminders about the end of the term wrap up. Many of you have talked about this in your site visits or had individual conversations with one of us, but we want to make sure that you know exactly what's happening now moving forward, because you won't be meeting with us anymore because you won't be having seminar anymore. So just remember that the last official day of field is April 20th, unless you've negotiated some other ending point with your field instructor and field faculty, and that your ed agreement, that all-important evaluation of the work that you've done this semester, that is due to us by the 23rd. And I guess I'll just say to you to remember that it's actually your responsibility to make sure that your field instructor completes your evaluation. We hope that you're having conversations with them about why they rated you the way that they rated you, so that you can use that information to kind of move your learning forward in the next semester. So don't leave field if your eval is not done. Don't leave field if your eval is not done. We only have a very short window to submit grades, and we all have to submit them as a class. So all of my seminar students for this section will get graded at the same time, and the grades get submitted. If I don't have your ed agreement, or your field faculty doesn't have your ed agreement, they cannot give you a grade, which is problematic. So please, please, please don't leave field without having your ed agreement completed. The other thing you need to make sure that you do is register for field. So most of you should be in, all of you actually should be in Social Work 691, and we know that there have been some questions around which section. If you enter section 888 in 691 with the appropriate amount of credit, some of you are going to be in field 4 days a week, and some of you will be in field for 3 days a week. Whatever that number of credits, 6 or 8, please enter that, and then you will get placed with the appropriate section. We kind of do that behind the scenes. Any questions about that particular piece of information, because it's caused some problems this term? Everyone knows how to get registered. Okay, excellent. And then next semester, although you won't be having seminar, you will be completing a placement verification form. It's just the same way that you did this time. And it will, once you complete it and submit it and it gets approved by our office, it will open up your ed agreement to start writing your assignments. And then those will also get submitted in the same way that you did it last time, approving with your field instructor, and then it comes to us directly to review and then offer suggestions or edits. And then you'll have another evaluation at the end of the term. And we'll be talking about that with you in your site visit as well. But if you have questions, of course, email us. Please stop by and say hi. We miss you during the summertime when you're all busy, and we want to be connecting with you. So if things are going well, great. Stop by and let us know that. If you're having a challenge and you need to think about it more with possible solutions, please come to us and let us know. That's what we're here for. And that's it. Yes? Okay, any questions about that wrapping up process, what next semester might look like, how we can help you? No? Right. So I see a lot of pizza back there and cookies and salad, so please keep eating. The idea for today actually was to focus on the competency that we haven't covered is professional identity. Oh, this was just my little funny. Here you go. Wrap it up, people. I know, it's funny, right? The idea today was to talk about professional identity because that's the last competency. And we thought, Lee and I were thinking, hey, this could be really cool if we talk to other people, students, graduates, alumni, field instructors, who have kind of gone through the place that you have been and are now either employed or are moving towards getting employed. We have someone who's graduating in April, Kelsey. Woo woo! I know, it's so exciting. So we thought that, who's it best to hear from us or from people who are out there and doing it? And we thought, okay, let's let them hear from people who are out there and doing it. So we have some questions. We only have 4 questions that are structured for them. And we're hoping that you're also going to be asking some questions. We're going to focus on professional identity, and we're also going to ask some questions about job search and what does that look like. We don't think it's ever too early to think about the end goal here. We also all see it as our job and responsibility, your field faculty, your field instructors, to help you get that first job. And so part of this conversation is in preparation of that. Also, the article that you picked up today was from one of our favorite resources. If you're not yet following the New Social Worker, it's an online kind of magazine, please do it. I follow it on Facebook, but I'm sure there's a cooler way to do it. It has great timely information, like what are the top 10 social work interview questions, or how do you translate your skills from one setting to another? Those are all really helpful for new professionals and even for myself. I just was reading one about the common interview mistakes in social work interviews. I think that that's really relevant, right? Even for me, someone who's been in the field over 20 years. So if we don't have any questions about that, we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay. All right, so we're first going to let our lovely panel introduce themselves. They're going to share their name, where their field placements were, the number of years post-MSW, or where their current field placement is, and then what's their current position that they're in right now. And I'm going to start with Erica.
Hello, everybody. Okay, does that sound good? My name is Erica Serlensic. I am 3 months post-grad, so some faces look kind of familiar. I just graduated in December. My field placement was at Starfish Family Services in Livonia. I was an outpatient therapist for kids age 5 to 17. And my current job is as a substitute teacher and a waitress. So I'm excited to share my post-grad journey with you all. I see some smiles and laughs, and I'm really excited to talk about where I'm at and what it's like to graduate.
Okay, I'm Kelsey. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I'm currently placed at Counseling and Psychological Services here on campus. And I'm a 21 student, so my first placement was at a private practice in Lansing. So I had to drive pretty far, but it was worth it. I got to work with children, teens, and adults. And I graduate in 3 weeks, but I have no time post-MSW. And I don't have a job yet, but it's okay. Everything's going to work out. That's where I'm at.
Hello, my name is Louis Guillen. I got my MSW in 2009, so I've had about 9 years field experience. My field placement was at the Guidance Center, which is downriver. I worked in a community called River Rouge at the Walter White Community Resource Center. It was starting a community center, which was really exciting for me. And I'm currently the Deputy Director at Community Action Network here in Ann Arbor.
Okay, Lenora must have had to step out for a second. She's taking a call. That's what happens when you're a working lady. So we'll go ahead and move forward. Louis, maybe you could start with describing how your social work identity has evolved over time.
Sure. It's a little more challenging for me. Developed. Great. Somewhere in there, guys want to start? Our decision. That's where I'm kind of at with it.
So starting the program in 2016 really helped me to make sense of what I had done before coming to school and be able to look at it through more of a social work lens and think about maybe things I would have done differently, um, things that I really appreciated about my other thing that I have definitely seen evolve in conflict as a social worker. And in one of my field placements, there was some challenges that definitely came up. Found that using the code of ethics and really approaching the conflict as a social worker and not just as a person, really helpful building that as a part of my just using the code of ethics and the code to just inform the been a really helpful framework. I know that's what we talk about a lot in field seminar, but I really do.
Lenora just joined us, so I'm going to have her introduce herself, and then she can also reflect on her development of social work professional identity.
Hi everyone, I'm Lenora. I graduated from this program last April, and I am an academic advisor in the Engineering Advising Center on North Campus. So we work with students, engineering students who are not declared yet in their major, so mostly first year students. When I was in the program, this social work program, I decided I wanted to work more so in higher ed. So my field placements were in the higher ed setting. But when I interviewed, I let my to-be supervisor know that I was really interested in weaving in my social work values and all of the things, right, that I went to school for into my position. So throughout the last year, I was assigned first-generation college students, so I get to impact those students, underrepresented students. I was just assigned to work on DEI grants and different initiatives, so writing like we want to have a DEI plan for our office, and then we are also writing some grants for different programs. So I feel like I'm weaving in social work into higher ed, since I feel like it's becoming more common for students to want to work in higher ed, but weaving it in a little bit here and there. So I feel like I'm still, I didn't get a master's in higher ed for a reason. So I want to be able to have the social work experience into my job as an academic advisor. And then there's a lot of ways as an academic advisor that you can, talk about wellness, not just talk about classes, but how are you doing, and all of those things is super important to me as well.
And so something that I've been learning about my professional identity since graduating and not having a social work job is that, like, I am still a social worker, even though, like, I'm not in a social work job right now. So I hope to be a school social worker one day. So the substitute teaching is a really good fit for me. That's, like, pretty natural. So I won't go into depth with that too much. But, like, I still feel like I'm working on my social work identity as a waitress. Like, I still try to bring, like, my most patient and, like, empathetic self to all my customers. I have customers who, like, are deaf and only speak sign language, and I negotiate that. Like, I have customers, like, regular customers who are on the autism spectrum, and, like, I work with that. And I think, like what Kelsey said, I still let the code of ethics guide me, and so I still focus on service, and I still focus on human relationships. And that's been important for me, I really just started reflecting on it as I was given these questions a couple days ago, because, like, who am I if I'm not, like, working with the people most in crisis? Like, am I really a social worker? Like, if I'm not, like, dealing with crises, like, every day? But the answer is yes, because I still feel like I'm developing as a professional, as a person. And so I don't know. I think I'm excited to be able to share with you guys that, like, even if you don't jump into social work right after graduating, like, you're still working on your professional self.
And I guess I'd also add to that, there's a lot of places where you will be employed or opportunities for employment where you might be the only social worker in that environment, whether you are the social worker as a waitress or whether you're the social worker in a school setting, or whether you're a social worker in higher ed. Many times you are the person that holds the identity of a social worker. And so I like to think about, how will that play out positively, and then also what challenges might you expect if you're the only person that's adhering to the code of ethics. Does anybody have a comment about that?
So, Action Network actually only has me. I would say everybody that works for our agency does, but background, something that I think is a strength of our education backgrounds. But it's challenging. I think one of the first things that you'll that people that aren't social workers care about are they're not beholden to it. So that's something that is challenging to navigate. But for my students, one thing that I always try and do for them is that's kind of the reality going forward. Professional careers where so it is challenging, but sometimes I kind of relish the role as the only.
So the second question is really around, are there tips that you would offer students as they begin their second term of field? So whether this is the student or alumni perspective or from the field instructor perspective.
Something that I'm thinking about as I only have left in this placement is wishing that I would have tried to connect with more people at my placement to hear about their journey. We're kind of split, psychologists and social workers at CAPS. There's a fair amount of social workers still, and I did get a chance to know a few people, but looking back, I think I really could have. I mean, with the time, it's busy, right? You go to field and there's so many different things you have to do, but really trying to be intentional about making those connections with people, even if it's just to hear their story or hear why they chose social work. And I think that people typically love interns and like to meet with them and help guide them as they move to their next steps, maybe not everywhere. And so if you can't find that at your placement, just trying to do that in general somewhere in the rest of your time before graduation. And then I know Lee and Rachel brought up the ed agreement, and I remember thinking in my couple last terms of field, how am I going to actually have this be beneficial for myself instead of kind of rewriting something that I'd already done. And so I tried to see it as using it to set goals for myself of what did I want to get out of this placement. I paid a lot of money to come to this program and be here and spend my time in school. And so trying to really use that as a way to set goals and think about what you really want to get out of the rest of the program because it goes really fast.
I would definitely piggyback off of that. So I think like your first semester in field, you're just kind of getting used to everything. You're taking classes, you're in field, it's a lot going on. But once you move forward, I think it's super important to think about like how is this impacting you, and also to start building your network, because I feel like I learned so much from the people that I brought into my network, and now they are learning so much from me in the sense that like Rachel was my field supervisor and now she's inviting me to speak on a panel, and it just goes both ways. So I think like that this is the time to start doing that because graduation is right around the corner and it comes so quickly. So yeah, definitely building your network is super important.
That would also be an awesome goal for professional identity or organizational context. Hint, hint.
My like number one tip was to kind of like what Kelsey said. Well, I thought about it when Kelsey said this, was to find a former intern or like a new employee, because I think that they're more sensitive to like the plight of the intern. I know that there was a former intern at Starfish that kind of took me under her wing, and I was just so grateful because like all the frustrations I had, like she had just had them. So I had someone to like run my ideas by and vent to. And so I feel like if you could find even just like, if you were only going to find to talk to like one new person at your internship, like find like a newly employed person, because I feel like they could relate to you on like a more real level maybe. And then I was someone who was not busy at my internship. So I don't know if anybody else has that experience, but sometimes you're like, I thought that I was going to be taught things. Like I thought someone was going to come here and like tell me what to do kind of. And when that didn't happen, I had a couple like co-students and we were all at the same placement. So we had to do things on our own. So we had like a little podcast group where like we would all like read The Body Keeps the Score together and then like talk about it while we didn't have clients. And like sometimes I was upset by that. Like I thought this was supposed to be different, but I guess my tip for your second semester in field would be like let go any like frustrations you have, because it's just not healthy to your learning. Like if you have to be responsible for your agenda, like I'm sorry, that kind of is a bummer, but also don't let that stop you from like using your time wisely, I would say.
I think so. Everybody's going into their second field term, is that correct?
Right. So they're just finishing their foundation field.
Okay. So something that I always tell my students is that I always try and get them thinking about a couple jobs from now. I mean, I'm not exempt from this. I think the first job most people have post degree is not what they thought they'd be doing. That's okay. I think that's something that's not said enough. It's okay that you have a job that you're like, well, this isn't where I want to be, or this isn't what I thought I'd be doing. But I always try and have them keep their eyes set on a job a couple steps from now, and really take another step further and say, how did those people get those jobs? What did they have to do to get there? And then try and tailor your experience to that. What can you pick up while you're on field to kind of give you a couple experiences, things you can put on your resume that may kind of put you on the path that you want to be going down to find the job that you want to do. And I think my advice from being a supervisor, something that I always appreciate in my students is people being very vocal that they're ready for more responsibility. They want to take on a larger role. Those kinds of things for me. I think most supervisors kind of have this assumption that, of course, people want to advance and do that kind of stuff, but saying something out loud is a very powerful thing. So if you can vocalize this and say, hey, I know I did this in the past. I really want to make a jump this next semester and try and do something different. I think a lot of people are very responsive to that. So, be bold. And I think the worst thing that can happen is they'll say not right now, but that's the same situation you were in without saying anything. So really try and maximize your time at field wherever it is, and whatever kind of supervisor you do have.
And I love that because you can use your evaluation time to kind of launch some of those conversations, right? So if you have completed a particular task and got a 2 or a 3, or let's say 3, maybe it's time to, up the rigor. And we're really looking for that anyway. I know many of us will pull up your first term ed agreement and look at your second term ed agreement and say, how are they pushing themselves to learn and grow? Where's the stretch here? You can even use that with your field instructors, right? Well, Rachel and Lee and Daisha, they're going to be looking at my ed agreement. They want me to up the rigor, right? So how are we going to do that this semester? So I thought that was a great point. Okay, let's talk about jobs, because I think this is a good transition. So can you talk a little bit about what was or is your job search process like, and what strategies are you using or did you use? What was helpful and what was really not that effective?
So I graduated last April, so I started job searching in January and had a job by graduation. So I feel like that timeline was pretty good, maybe even a little earlier, because it doesn't hurt to have a couple interviews. I get nervous when I have an interview, so it's just nice to like get a couple of them out of the way, so then you feel more comfortable, like talking about yourself, etc. How many of you like want to work in higher ed? Is there anyone in the room that's interested in higher ed? Okay, like a couple people. So I wanted to work at the University of Michigan, and so I applied to a ton of jobs at U of M. Started in January, and then, waited to hear back, and I had to give a presentation in the job that I am in right now. So that's a common thing in higher education, but it might be in other fields as well. So I was using my network was super helpful, that I was talking about before, because if there was a job in the comprehensive studies program, for example, like someone from there that I knew told me about the job even before it was posted. So I was able to start getting a resume and cover letter ready early. And then definitely talking to people in the different offices where I had interviews for. So just like asking them about their office, learning more about what they do on a daily basis, shadowing different people was super helpful. And then negotiating my salary was super important. So I took Sue Ann Savas for 630, I don't remember what number it was, 683 something. And she talks about negotiating your salary. So I feel like that's a good skill to have and to think about before you accept a job offer as well.
So my first job that I got out of the program, I actually got hired in by my field placement. And I kind of knew that like halfway through the second term. So it was a lot of the stress that most people go through, I didn't experience. So I'm really lucky in that regard. But I think one thing that I would love to echo is leaning on your network. I don't have any problem asking everyone you know to do you a favor to get to an interview. Everyone that's here has had help from people that they know to get where they are. And it's nothing to be embarrassed about. I always tell people that are looking for a job around Cannes or anywhere else that I might have some people that I still know, I can get you to an interview, but you got to do the rest, right? So ask people and just say, look, I'm still looking for a job that sounds like something that I'd be good at, and try and get them, just touch the people that you know. Let them do some work for you. It is really, really good advice. And I think if some of you guys are actually searching for jobs, I think it's important to warn you that it is a full-time job looking for work, and it is a real emotional roller coaster, especially if you start applying for jobs that you like see yourself doing. So I always try and have people, keep an even keel emotionally and don't go too far down that rabbit hole of like, man, my life would change if I had this job. Because it's tough. It's really tough. And I think applying to a bunch of places is smart. Getting some interviews out of the way is really smart. But yeah, it's intense. And I tell some of my students, the further away you kind of get from U of M, the more weight your degree has. This area is very saturated with U of M, MSWs and other grads in the area. So I'm not saying leave the area, but, it could help.
Well, I'll pick up there because the reason why I am subbing and waitressing is that I'm moving to Colorado next month. So I intentionally decided not to pursue social work and get a client base, knowing that I had to leave and stuff. So I'm doing the job search right now, and I'm starting to feel like maybe I should have started a couple weeks earlier, because now I'm 4 weeks out from a move, and I've heard that 6 to 8 weeks is the most appropriate. So just mark that down in your heads. What do I want to say about job searching? It's so much, it's difficult doing it in a different state. All the letters are different, there's just different things that you got to do. So the way I started, so if you're planning on moving to a different state, just doing it all new, was I did Indeed searches, and I would go down to the requirements, and it would say this certification, and then I would look up, Google search, what is this certification? And it's just been a puzzle piece process, and to echo what everybody else has said so far, like just tell everybody what you're doing and just ask everybody. Like right before this panel, I learned that I'm moving to the city that Kelsey grew up in. And she's like, oh, there's actually a job posting for a school social worker right now. So like as soon as I leave here, that's what I'm going to go do. I'm going to go look at that. So yeah, I don't know. I guess all I can say is that it takes a lot of time. Just like they said that it does take time. I'm like feeling that time. And just like don't lose hope in yourself. Like just do other stuff and like know that you're still a social worker. You're just looking for your right job. What else did I say? Oh, another cool thing to find agencies out in an area that I'm not living in is I had a distant connection with someone who worked for a philanthropic like grant agency. And so I communicated with her, and then she actually had a lot of information on agencies that they were giving grants to. And so then I'm finding out like what kind of programs are getting started in those areas and what agencies have those programs. So I don't know. I would say maybe looking at like grant agencies where you want to work might tell you like what agencies are doing those jobs. That's been helpful to me as well.
So I am kind of just starting my job search process. I've been looking at things and applying since about January, a couple fellowships. They're really competitive. That's what I'm telling myself. And I'm in an interesting situation navigating my next steps with my partner. And so there's a lot of different options of places that we could be, but I've tried to still use that as a way to focus on the job search. So one of the options is Chicago. So I met with someone at my internship that had done social work in Chicago for 15 years. And it just made me feel better and maybe like I was doing more to just sit down with him and learn about all of these different agencies and areas in Chicago that he really liked working in. And that's just another way to connect and network, right? Maybe I don't go to Chicago this summer, but I could in a couple years. You never know. And I also, you never know what you could get hired by your current internship. I also have a work study at Meals on Wheels, and they did offer to hire me as a temp as I stay in Ann Arbor and my lease runs out, and I never would have expected that out of my work study. So just even if it's something that you're like, oh, this is just a way to make money or this is just a way to make it through grad school, you never know what can come out of different opportunities. And I'm also just trying to remind myself that I will get a job. It might not be, I might not have a job at graduation, but I'm in my own unique situation of navigating with someone else. So I don't know if that's helpful, and I have applied to a lot of jobs and get the Glassdoor notifications all of the time. And so that's helpful too.
Can I add one more thing that kind of jogged my memory? Just one other piece of advice I would give is that when you're looking at these jobs, don't let the desired qualifications stop you from applying. As somebody that has ignored them and that currently hires people, job descriptions actually mean very little when you're looking at hiring somebody. You put it down because that's kind of what your agency is looking for. But you never know if you're exactly what they're looking for. And again, if you get to an interview, anything's possible.
I just wanted to ask all of you if you used career services or in your job search process, and if you did, if you wanted to share about that experience. Oh,
That's okay. Okay. Yep. I did use career services, especially mostly for like taking the exam and getting licensed in Colorado. Michelle was so helpful with that. I also got the printout of all social work alumni that live in the state of Colorado, and I had to boldly email every single one of them like, hey, I'm coming, like, can you help me get a job? And so you just have to do it, and there was like a lot of not returned emails, and that's okay. But yeah, I did use career services for those two things, and they were both really helpful with getting started.
I also went to one of Michelle's workshops on licensure, which I found to be really helpful because she just has a wealth of knowledge about all different states. And if she doesn't know a detail, she'll go and research for you and email you right away. And so I found that to be really beneficial because I was going in like, I might get licensed in 6 different places. Can you help me? And that was really great.
I still use Michelle. So I was like emailing with her the other day because for renewal, I needed to do a human trafficking webinar thing, and then we found one that worked, and et cetera. So yeah, I used her a lot. I had a friend that worked there that was their GSSA position, and I had them look at my resume and cover letter, which was super helpful. But I still use Michelle for like licensing questions because I'm going through the process of getting my license. So definitely a good resource to keep in mind.
I didn't use her while I was here. Like I said, I had a pretty fortunate first job experience, but I have since recommended her to just about every student I've had since.
You also talked, Louie, about how you got a job from your field placement, and I also just want to say you were humble about that, but you actually got a job from your field placement, right? So that talks about that's kind of the best kind of feedback that as field faculty we could get. I would like to hire this person, right? So thinking about where you're placed now, if you really thought this might be a place that you would want to work, what kinds of questions do you need to ask of your field instructor? Who do you need to meet? Maybe you aren't going to be able to get in the program that you're actually doing your field placement in, but if it's a larger agency, where else may you start in terms of an entry-level position if you really felt like this might be an agency that you would really want to work for when you graduate?
Yeah, I would just say, I was just reading one of the new social worker articles this morning, and the first thing was the first mistake that they were talking about that new grads make when they're job searching is that they rely on finding jobs online primarily, and that the research shows that about, I think they said 70% of jobs are actually achieved, like offers are achieved through network. So that really told me, I was like, okay, well, that means that I probably need to be emphasizing to my students even more, talk to people, meet with them. When Lenore was my student, I gave her a list of 20 names of social workers in higher ed, and she made appointments with all of them. She just emailed them, was like, Rachel told me to come and email you. I'm interested in learning more about your role. And she just did it. And I think that kind of initiative on building your network, you don't have to love everybody. You don't even have to want their job, but just you never know who's going to end up on the interview panel, right? You don't know what opening, what impression you might make. This morning, a social worker moved from Portland, and she met with Dan, and she has an interest in social work and higher ed, and Dan Fisher was like, oh, you need to meet with Rachel, and she is pretty well connected on campus. And so today I met with her. I didn't know anything about her. She was lovely, and she has got awesome skill set and probably could have lots of different kinds of jobs, but that was all because she took the initiative. She did field in Portland. She took the initiative to email Dan. Dan took the meeting with her, and then Dan referred her to me, and I was like, oh, yeah, well, actually, she's applying for a job that I know the director of. I was like, oh, I'll email them and let them know we had this conversation. That's how the work gets done. So be brave and humble in your approach, and you can start thinking about that right now. This is not too early. I mean, it takes time to set up meetings with people and have coffee or lunch or stop by and follow up and thank people for their time. That all takes time. So this is actually a great time to start thinking about, who do I want to meet and what do I need to know about them and how can that help me move forward? The other thing I would say about the out-of-state stuff is if you think you're moving out of state, checking in with Michelle now or starting to do some research now about the licensure process in that particular state, because that might influence the kinds of experiences you want to emphasize in your field placement. Because some places require you to have some kind of more clinical experiences, like Wisconsin, for example. They want you to be doing like DSM diagnosis and treatment planning in your field placement. And if you have that experience, then they reduce the number of hours post-graduation that you have to have. If you don't have that experience, it's okay, but they add them on to the post-graduation. So knowing what the licensure requirements are for the state that you want to go to might actually influence how you approach what you're doing right now in field placement. Okay. We're going to get to questions in just a minute. So the last question that we prepared, and we're hoping that you also will have some questions for our panel, says talk about the first year of your professional, as a professional social worker. What would have been helpful to know? Did you have any surprises? What did your supervision look like? Were you seeking your LMSW or did you not?
I don't really have too much to say on this. The field.
Well, but I think that was a decision that you made, right?
Oh yeah, definitely. So, yep. I don't.
Yep, she made that decision.
Yep.
So I felt imposter syndrome at like the beginning for probably like 3 or 4 months. It was, going to school my whole life and then getting a master's, and now I should know stuff. But I mean, in working with students too, I feel like I look like them. Like I could totally sit in a classroom and pretend that I was a freshman and no one would even know the difference. So a lot of my colleagues have a lot more experience than I do. So like I didn't even think that was going to be a thing that I would experience. Also just getting used to not being a student took me a minute too, because I only took 2 years off between undergrad and grad school, and in those times I was doing like higher ed work and working in a school. But then like I was like, wow, I come home at 5 and I don't have any homework. I don't have anything to do, and I'm not seeking a higher degree as before I was. So that was weird at first. And in terms of my license, so I am doing supervision for my license. My supervisor is. My first field placement was at Dean of Students in the Union. My second was at Blavin Scholars, which Rachel was the director for before, but Miriam Connolly is the director now. So Miriam is doing my supervision. Luckily, she's on North Campus, which is where I am, so that worked out. And we meet once a week for an hour. And then I'm also going to take the test at the end of probably this month or early next month and get that out of the way as well. So it was helpful that I was able to work with someone that I had an internship with. Like I knew Miriam really well, and that worked out. But I am pursuing my license.
I think my first year in the field, there were a lot of surprises. When I was a student here, my academics advisor was Mike Spencer, and he told me, don't go for title or money, go for good supervision. And I didn't listen to him. So I think one of the things that's been challenging for me throughout my entire social work career is that I've never had good supervision. Not in the way that we talk about supervision. It's never been real for me. I think in some ways that has helped me to be a better supervisor to the students that I have and the employees that are under me. But it's a hard way to learn something. I think, it's hard to say go for good supervision, but it is important. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about it. I tell people that, learning by having disappointment is a way to learn. It's not how I would like for people to learn, but it is something that we do. But yeah, go for good supervision. It's really, really worth it.
Would you say because you were hired by your field placement, was there an adjustment moving from being a student in that agency to being a professional in that agency?
Yeah, definitely. I think the expectations are a lot higher when you're an employee. I was in such a unique situation where we were just starting something new. We were starting a community center from the ground up. So I had been doing it for about a year as an intern, but there were so many unknowns that they were counting on me to kind of fill in as a social worker. And that's a lot. As a new social worker, it's like now you're the expert, and that is what you become when you're done. You are the expert, subject matter expert. But when you're the only person doing it, it's really challenging. So I was learning as I was working, and I think most of the time that's kind of how it goes. But yeah, it's really the learning curve for my first job was pretty intense, and you sink or swim, and I think I did eventually get a lot out of it, but it was challenging. Yeah.
Okay, so unless Daisha back there, you have a question. She came back. No. Okay. I'm wondering if anybody else has any questions for our panelists. things you want to know.
At the microphone, if anybody.
There's almost 80 people in this room. I
Curiosity.
can't imagine that there aren't any questions. Here we go. A brave soul.
I was just wondering, since you got hired by your field placement, like how did that conversation go? Did you initiate? They ask you like what you were thinking?
I think they initiated. I remember we got a multi-year grant halfway through my term with them, which opened up some opportunities. But I think I was always very clear about what professionally, I've always been very transparent with those kinds of things. Strong believer in putting out what you placement terrible at. So you don't put it out there, it's probably not going to happen. And I think I can sit and tell you guys that but most of my steps along my path were I wasn't sitting and waiting for an opportunity to happen. I happen to know some people that used to like me. That's it. Challenging sometimes when you're like, does limit. A lot of times I try not to stay locked in.
Others?
You can make a comment too, if you don't have a question.
Excuse me. I'm just a little curious about what the job search was like with a limited license versus full licensure and how that might change what you're looking for in a job.
Good question.
I don't know that this is like the right way to do it or the only way to do it, but just the way I was doing it. I was a Detroit Clinical Scholar, so I was working in community mental health in Wayne County. And so something that I would like to be a school social worker one day, but that was not where my internship was. And I know that with a limited license, it's far easier to get into community mental health. So with a limited license, like that's more of where I look because I just feel like they're hiring there more. Yeah.
I think it depends on what you want to do. I think an MSW degree is extremely malleable. You can do anything you want with it. So I met my wife in this program. She's a social worker now, although she doesn't practice social work, right? So for a while she worked at a foundation. She was getting her license, but now she works at IBM, and they don't care. So I would say that if it's not important for your job and they're not going to pay you more, then really think about why you're doing it. If it's something that's important to you, go for it. But if it's something that is required of your job, or they're going to pay you more, those are pretty big reasons too.
Well, I would also say that if the job says social work, you have to have a license. So you have to have whatever license you can get. And when you get out of school and you have an MSW, in Michigan, that's an LL, a limited license. But you really need to know what state you're going to, because most states don't have a limited license. They have different kinds of licensure. So it's important for you to know what that licensure is as you're pursuing your job. But many jobs in Michigan or in this area do hire LLs. And then you're looking for that good supervision, right? Because you need to have that 2 years of supervision and postmaster's work and take your test. Another question, I think. Oh,
I just wanted to thank you all for sharing like the imperfections in your journey post or almost post graduation, because I know sometimes on these panels it's like everybody wants to share like this perfect, like, yeah, I got my dream job right after I graduated, and I know that's like not always the reality. So I just wanted to thank you all for being vulnerable and just like sharing the truth of like the bumps and the upward journey at this time in your career. Thank you.
I wasn't paying attention.
Okay, so I have a question. Finally, you guys thought I was going to get through all this without saying anything.
I kind of did. I'm really quiet today.
So my question is, oftentimes when you come into the program, you have like all of these things that you feel you need to learn and you want to learn and you feel you need to know before you get out. So what would you say are the lessons that you didn't know you needed to learn that you learned in the program that have been helpful and stayed with you?
I wish I would have taken a class on grant writing. That is my biggest regret from the program. So I actually recently wrote a grant to get some money to do a first-gen program in engineering, and I had a friend that took the class with Barb Hiltz like a year or two ago, and she sent me all of the materials, which was awesome. But of course, being in the class was a totally different experience. So that's a super practical class, and I feel like I should have taken something like that. But I think a lot of my classes, a lot of the IP classes, I do that stuff every day with students, so those are super helpful. And then classes focused on, I took a lot with Julie Robato because I'm really interested in attachment theory, even though I knew that I wasn't going to be working with babies, right? But Julie preaches that, that first year of life is super important, and I see that in my students now, 18 years old. I'm like, oh, I bet they were secure, or they were ambivalent or whatever, right? So I feel like I use those things all of the time. And then diversity, activities that I did in classes, I do with my students now. So that's super helpful. But yeah, I should have taken at least grant writing, maybe something else. And then the last thing, I took the families class with Rich Tolman, which was super helpful too, because sometimes I have parents come in with their students and I can see how they interact, and what that kind of says. My background is psychology. That was my undergrad. So I feel like I'm doing that my mind is running on a daily basis thinking of that as well. So.
I really liked this program, and I got a lot out of it. And I think going through almost a decade of interns, I've seen kind of trends in how people feel about the School of Social Work and the degree they're getting. And I'll tell you what I think what I still have from here. Yeah, I do remember certain professors and classes that I took. Probably not as well as some of you guys do, but I tell my students a lot that this program creates leaders in our field, and I credit a lot to the way that I approach problems, the way I approach conflict with between people that I work with, the way that I fit in my agency. These things that you guys might not be directly being taught. It does change the way that we kind of approach our work. So I do love the School of Social Work here. I'm still very connected. But yeah, there's a lot of things that, you're picking up that you might not necessarily be cognizant of right now.
That's kind of what I was thinking of too, and I'm trying to put the words together correctly in my head, but I wish I would have understood more that social work is just as much about how you work with your coworkers as it is the people that you're actually serving. So I just graduated in December, and this was a pretty tumultuous time to be getting an MSW degree, and there's a lot of conflict in this school, and there's a lot of conflict on campus. And I was like, oh man, like once I graduate, it'll just all calm down. But like, that's not really true. So you have to learn how to work well with the people around you. Like you're not on a solo mission, like for the people that you serve. So like, if you can't be like patient and loving with your coworkers, like you're likely not going to be like fulfilled by your job. And I find that in my social work job and in my not social work jobs. So I wish I would have cared more about like the students around me and focus more on like working through problems. Yeah.
And something that I've been reflecting on a lot as graduation is approaching is while the classes here are really important and there's a lot of amazing professors, so much about this program is what you make of it and what you put into it. And there's so many outside opportunities and different resources, but it can be easy to just think, well, I'm in this program and I just have to get the requirements done that I need to do. But much like the professional real world, you kind of have to put the work in to get the extra stuff and the extra experience.
Hi. So I feel like a couple of you touched on this a little bit, but I'm wondering what your engagement with the School of Social Work has been like after graduation. I know like my undergrad basically dropped us, right? Like you pay all this money and you go and you get a newsletter every other month. So I'm just wondering like if you can speak to that.
So I'm fortunate enough to still be on campus, right? So I'm on North Campus. Anytime I'm on Central, like I'll come in and say hi to whoever, and I feel like I stay connected that way. Over winter break, I emailed my 3 top faculty that I had, and I won't say their names, but and we all, like 2 of them, we ended up getting lunch. They came to North Campus. I showed them my office. We got lunch together. So I want to stay connected. And that building network that I've been talking about, like, is so important to me. And then Rachel and Lee, I became really close with both of them as well. So like I'm here, right? And like we're doing another panel next week, and we did one in February. And I am connected with Erin Zimmer in the admissions office. So like I feel like I'm staying connected because I want to be. If I wasn't on campus, it would definitely be more challenging though, you know, if I'm here. So it makes I can just take the bus and get down here in 15 minutes. But I don't know. I want to stay connected. Did a panel in February, and 3 students that were in the audience found me on LinkedIn, and 2 of them came up and we like had coffee and we talked about my job and where they want to be. They were really interested in higher ed. So I think part of it is what you want to be, but also like access is also important.
I agree. And I mean, I just graduated 3 months ago, but I've already been here a couple times taking practice exams, like trying to stay busy, like before I move. And also I think the difference between undergrad and now is that you hopefully more likely have like stronger relationships with your faculty. So sometimes I just like shoot off emails like, hey, like thinking about you, like hope you're having a good Wednesday. And Daisha was like, yes, I am now that you email me. So yeah, I guess it's like what you make it, and also like, I don't know, like I don't know. I feel like sometimes I think, okay, I graduated undergrad, my professors don't remember me or they are not going to care, but I feel like it's different in the School of Social Work. I hope that you guys feel a similar way.
I really have been connected pretty much since I've been done. I have had interns for a long time. So I'm connected through the Office of Field Instruction very closely. And I think what kind of keeps me close, I'm sure a lot of you guys have developed friendships with people that are in the program. I have about maybe, 24 people that I'm still close with from my cohort. So every time that I connect with them or we have like our little social work reunions, it still brings this like closeness to this place, or the people that have moved away are like, hey, let's go by the School of Social Work just to see the space, that kind of thing. So I agree. I don't think this place is ever really done with you. I just ran into one of my old interns, Madelle, and she was like, I'm graduating and I'm already getting nostalgic, and I was like, well, it's not going anywhere. So yeah, they keep you close here.
And I would just say from the field office, we touch every single student, right? And we want you to come back for panels. We want you to be a field instructor. We want you to come to alumni events. We want you to show up and just say hi. And so we can say that all we want, but it would be awkward if we were reaching out to you after you graduated and you were like, why are they still emailing me? That's weird. This is like a reciprocal thing, right? When Lenora was in her job search process, she walked me right through it the whole way, right? Like, I'm applying for this job. I'm applying for this job. Just wanted to keep you updated. I knew what was happening, and I could serve as a reference or even a coach for interviewing and all of that. So I think you have to take us up on the opportunities that we offer to you, whether it be the Office of Field Instruction or faculty or OSS, wherever you're finding that connection with people, you build that into your network, right, and use that as an opportunity so that you can maintain that connection, because we want to do that. That's part of why we do what we do, because of all of you. Other questions? These are great. Not so much. Okay. Well, can we please give our panel a warm welcome and thank you. Okay, so I'm going to set them all free because they're heading back to work or whatever fun thing, class, job, whatever. And you all should have picked up an article and a reflection document. Does anybody not have one? Two things. Looks like pretty much everybody has one. If you don't, raise your hand and Lee or somebody will run one over to you. We'd like you to take a minute and complete the reflection tool. And then we're going to do some discussion, probably at your tables, and then a large report out. So let's take 10 minutes to do some writing. Yeah, 10 minutes to do some writing. Thank you so much. Thank you. Is it next week or is it this? Got like 15 more to go. Oh, we're doing it. Also, make sure you sign in. You didn't sign in, but we also need it just for attendance. Yes.
All right, so once you've gotten your things written, please use some time at your tables to share with each other some of your reflections. And then we're going to take some time in a little bit to have you do some share outs of that. But take 10 minutes or so. If you still need some time to write it, that's fine. But once everybody at your table is done, take some time to really share out together.
I do have the Jeopardy in here. If we do feel like, I don't think we'll have time, but I do have Jeopardy. I do have.
I don't know what's going on these days. Okay, everyone, I hear you're really talking. Want me come back to the front here? So we just want folks in maybe at each table to maybe just share some takeaways or a takeaway to the panel that you saw today,
to some of the questions, any of the questions you have. If you identified maybe a theme at your table, someone could talk about that, and we'll bring the microphone to you too. So anybody, which table would like to go? Okay, go.
All right, I've been elected. I think a big takeaway from our table, we all kind of agreed that networking is something that's not necessarily second nature to us or not necessarily easy based on personality or past experience, but that it seems to be an incredibly important point that we're hearing from everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And as social workers, guess what? We're pretty good at that. We're pretty good at engaging with people. You're learning how to do that. So practicing that skill, not only with clients and communities, but with each other is really important. Good. You can popcorn a table. Which table would you like to hear from? Another table. Okay, Drew.
So we also talked about all of us agreed that networking is also important, and not to take for granted those times that we have time to build relationships, and then expand the relationships that we have, because they will benefit us in the future.
Nice. Yeah.
I love that you guys are talking about networking, because when I'm kind of a picture thinker, and when I think about the profession of social work, I think most of you guys are probably saw like a meme or a picture of sea otters, and they link arms to stay afloat so they don't drown, and that's social work. We're at sea otters and we link arms so we don't drown too.
When I did my field placement, it was at the VA in Battle Creek, and my field instructor's name was Betsy Vachel. And Betsy and I got to know each other. I graduated and I went out and started doing work. And I was in the Kalamazoo area, and she left the VA and became the field coordinator at Western Michigan University. And she called me up and she said, Lee, you need to have students. I was a medical social worker. So then we worked together in that capacity, where I started having students, MSW students. So then she moved here to take a job at the school of social work at the Office of Field Instruction as the director. And when there was a job that opened up, I applied and I was hired. And some of that was because I had a relationship with her, and she already knew the work that I had done. And she actually was someone who helped train me in field instruction. So that's a way that the network can work. And I didn't know that that was going to happen, right? So just you never know when those connections are going to come up. So another table I want to share. I'm close to this one. Anybody? Alexis? Okay, you got it. No. I was getting it for you. I was helping you.
Ready? I wasn't here for the discussion.
We were discussing how it's super important when it comes to the cold calling on developing the relationship. So using the time as being a student to just kind of reach out and say, I am a student, so while you're still in school and not necessarily with any interest of looking for a job, but just looking to hear more about a person's experience, that it opens the door a little bit more easily. So starting now would be better than doing it later when we are looking for jobs.
So at my internship, my supervisor allows like time for me and my other MSW intern to schedule time with people to network on campus and stuff. So I think you can either like advocate for yourself and see if that's a possibility, because I have met a lot of people within higher ed, because I'm interested in higher ed, and trying to talk with them. I even scheduled with, she's the program manager of MESA and like student life. She's going to help me during the summer
I guess, tailor my resume and my cover letters to particular job opportunities and stuff. So like I found this random one that I believe Spectrum was hiring a program manager. So we're going to kind of like act like I'm applying to it and like using that as a mock way to prepare myself, because I jumped right out from undergrad last April, so I'm not really skilled at interviewing and stuff. So I really need this kind of work through kind of thing going on.
Yeah, I love that you said that these are some of the areas you want to build on, because you know that you don't have some of that experience already. What a great assignment for her ed agreement for the spring summer term, right? Or any of your assignments in terms of being able to do some of that networking. It fits very well on your ed agreement, and you could probably include it under a couple of different competencies, right? So let's do another table before we, how about on this side? That's over there, Mary.
Hi, everyone. So we talked a little bit about also networking, as all the other tables mentioned, and also just like the value of using all the information you're getting at your current field placement and how you can apply those connections and those learnings to your future work endeavors, as well as some things that we talked about was like professional identity and just clarifying your own set of values and how you can take that on to any job that you aspire to in the future.
These are all really great. Some things to reflect on. So this last question here, who is in your field support network? So look around you. All of you are a support person to each other. Some of you, and especially the ones of you who've been in seminar, right, together. So you're really connected as a group, and you're in a similar cohort, and so you will likely be in classes together. So consider this next term that you're building on your first professional peer support consultation group, right? You're going to be turning to your peers, your sister and brother social workers for consultation and supervision. You're going to have a supervisor, but you're going to turn to each other for support when you work. So start building that relationship amongst yourselves too. Anybody want to have the final word or the final thought? Final inspiration? I think we had it up here. We handed it out in that handout. If you don't know about the new social worker online, you should go to it. There's a great article on negotiating salaries that's really good. I'm trying to find the clicker. Well, I wanted to go back to that article, the 4 L's. So here's the 4 L's before we leave. Lead with your competencies, embrace lifelong learning, get licensed, and leave a legacy, right? You're doing that in your field placement, but you also want to keep doing that forward. So thanks, everybody. Have a good rest of your term. You know where we all are if you need us, right? No, you keep them for yourself. That's going to be your map for building your next debt agreement, right? Yeah.